By the January of 1942, the UK's most easterly town, Lowestoft, was no stranger to the war now raging across the world. They had lived through raids before, but nothing compared to what they were about to face. The 13th of January 1942, a cold day in the depth of winter. Falling snow fills the air. Despite the weather, there are still many people out in the fading light this afternoon, either shopping or having tea in the Worley and Sons restaurant. We may never know the conversations they were having this day, but we can guess. The recent entry of the USA into the war, after the attack on Pearl Harbor, the ruthless advance of the Japanese across the Far East, with Hong Kong fallen, and British, Indian, and other Empire forces now making their final stand in Singapore, including men of the Suffolk Regiment. But not all the news of this time is bleak. To the east of Europe, German advance into Russia has been checked and stopped at the gates of Moscow. 4:21 p.m. The all too familiar sound of the air raid siren sounded across the town, but due to numerous false alarms over recent months, not all went to their nearest shelters. From across the North Sea, a lone Dornier 217 had crossed and was now flying up the coast. Two anti-aircraft batteries opened fire with their Bofors guns, but due to the low visibility with cloud, they ceased fire after only 8 rounds. By 4:27, the Dornier was over Lowestoft, flying north along London North Road when it dropped 4 high explosive bombs, reducing shops, businesses, homes and restaurants to rubble. Its job done, it pulled off into the clouds and made for Holland. A witness, Donald Hogg, described the scene. 1 minute a row of shops, the next a heap of bricks, wood and twisted metal. When the smoke cleared, 12 buildings were totally destroyed, with a further 21 buildings damaged, and 71 people, both civilians and members of the armed forces, had been killed. Although minor compared to raids on London, Coventry and other cities across the country, this day would stand as the deadliest raid anywhere in East Anglia during the war. Rescuers sprang into action immediately, helping the injured on the street and digging through vast piles of rubble looking for survivors. But with the whole street in chaos, where to begin? Among the shops destroyed in the bombing were Alderson's Shoe Shop, Magdalen's Music Shop, Trueform Boot Company, J. Hepworth and Sons Outfitters, the dental practice of Peter Walter Davis, which was located in one of the 5 apartments above Hepworth's, Chipperfield Hardware Store, Freeman, Hardy and Willis's Shoe Shop, a Boots Chemist, a 50-shilling tailor's, W. B. Cooper China Dealer, Eve Brown's Gowns, Bonsal's Jewellers, and R. Waller's and Sons Restaurant and Grocery. Most of the victims were in Waller's at the time of the raid, leading the bombing to become known as Waller's Raid. Other notable buildings nearby that were damaged were a Marks and Spencer's, the facade of an Odeon cinema, and the back of the Marina Theatre. Working around the clock, rescue teams made up of professionals and volunteers managed to dig 12 survivors from the rubble, including one from a basement 2 days after the raid itself. But there was little else in the way of good news. The death toll was high, and by the end of the clear-up, 65 bodies had been removed from the rubble. The nearby Odeon, which had been damaged in the attack, was used as a medical area and mortuary until authorities could get on top of the casualties. A policeman, speaking after, described the rescue efforts. The rescue service had a very hard task, working day and night for 4 days. At night, by floodlights which had to be extinguished at intervals on the approach of raiders. Help would come from nearby Pakefield and as far away as Ipswich, as well as from naval and other military personnel stationed in the nearby area. During the rescue, 4 members from the rescue parties would be recognised for their efforts. 3 British Empire medals would be awarded to members of the official rescue team, and a George Cross, the highest medal for bravery not in the face of the enemy, would be awarded to Private John Scott of the 7th Battalion, the Borders Regiment, for his conspicuous gallantry in carrying out hazardous work in a very brave manner. As mentioned before, a raid like this was nothing compared to the larger raids on the bigger cities, but it gives you an idea how powerful and destructive the bombs that were dropped were. The picture on screen is a diagram of the street after the raid. The ages of the 70 killed range from as young as 2, David Stephen Paul, killed in number 92 along with his mother and grandmother, to 70, Ernest Maudling, killed in his shop, as were 4 other people in number 106. In Warlier's restaurant, number 86 to 88, at least 15 people were killed. The bombing, like so many others during the war, rather than shattered civilian morale, in the long run galvanized it. with police reports of the following weeks saying, although the casualties in Lowestoft after the raid on the 13th of January 1942 were the heaviest yet encountered, there is no evidence of undue panic. Recent raids on Lowestoft do not appear to have increased evacuation to any extent. Among those killed were 20 members of the armed forces, mostly from some branch of the Royal Navy, whether it was Royal Navy, Royal Naval Reserve, Women's Royal Naval Service, or Royal Naval Patrol Service. But a Lance Corporal and 2 privates from the Bedfordshire and Hertfordshire Regiment were also killed. Of those 20, 7 are buried in a small military cemetery attached to Lowestoft Cemetery. Rebuilt after the war, London Road North still serves as the main shopping street for Lowestoft, and a plaque is located near the site of the bombing in memorial for the lives lost. A more overlooked symbol of what was once there is the tiled entrance to what was once Freeman, Hardy and Willis's is still visible. I hope you enjoyed this presentation. This was Warlia's Raid, East Anglia's worst bombing, and this was a little bit of history.